In Hawaii there's so much to do. There's hula, there's surfing and real estate too. We just two local guys with so much to say. So listen to the real estate brothers today.
August real estate statistics, Federal Reserve's new plan, and a little bit discussion on do not be a statistic. You guys can reach other past monthly updates at reialoha.com/videos-articles. And again, this is the September 2020 monthly update. Before we get started, there's always a little Easter egg giveaway for folks. I have an Tradeline eCourse that I'd like to give away. If people want to send me their lucky number from 0 to 99, email it at lane@SimplePassiveCashflow.com before September 15th, and I'll put you in a drawing to win that. I don't know if I'm going to do some kind of fancy random number generator and record it, but the winner gets a free Tradeline eCourse. This is a great way that I made $10,000 in 2019 and probably going to make the same thing in 2020 to put authorized users on all the credit cards I have and sort of rent out my authorized user slots. It's not really like renting out your credit. The authorized users, your credit score reports onto them and they get a credit score boost. This is all done through a third-party broker. Again,
how much do you charge for that, Lane, for the course?
I don't know. I don't really know. I put it up there and sometimes I forget. I think it's like a few $100, but you'll make that back in like the first month or so of doing this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Dean, why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, and people want to know what you've been up to personally.
Yeah. Oh, well, like you said, Lane, we're on episode 31. That seemed pretty quick, and how we've changed over these last 31 episodes and in this, how we presented. And now we're kind of forced to go to this remote, but it's kind of interesting. We're kind of headed that way anyway. But yeah, my name is Dean Ueda. I'm a former CPA and I'm active real estate investor and realtor. Lane, both you and I like to give back, giving value adds to newbie real estate investors, like how we used to be way back when. So trying to give back to the real estate community. What I'm doing these days.
What are you doing these days other than picking up boxes randomly in the middle of the day from my house?
And
picking up on
well, the real estate side, the sales side is busy, and so that's keeping me busy, as well as my two children. They have distance learning, so I'm the IT support for when they have trouble, and also trying to keep them in focus. I'm the sergeant at arms, or the VP, if you will.
Any lessons learned, or
to have patience? I think I'm realizing they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so a lot of my traits I notice my son has, and sometimes he's impatient when he's having trouble with his IT stuff. So when he gets short, then that makes me get short. So I have to remind myself to be patient, and everyone's going through tough times. And this is going to be another topic later on in one of the slides, but everything, even in terms of the rest of the family, my wife and stuff, it's like we're all in close quarters now. So we have to be cognizant of it and be empathetic of that with every aspects, because everyone's so close together. And we're fortunate we're in a single family home and we can lock ourselves in a separate room and things like that. So we're fortunate for that. And we also live in a cul-de-sac. So we bought a small little tennis net and we set up the tennis. We have a mini tennis court in the cul-de-sac, so he gets to get some repetitions in terms of tennis, so having fun. And then, one more thing that I was doing is from the library. Libraries are still open, guys, so I have this book, There's No Plan B for Your A Game, by Bo Eason, former NFL safety, and he's also a playwright and thespian. But it's a motivational book, of course, and it's about bringing your A game and setting forth a plan to be the best. And it's not just a short-term thing. He talks about having a 20-year plan to be the best at whatever you can do, and just setting that up front and setting up all of these steps, how he lines it up, gives you guidance, I guess, and helps you from straying away from all of the noise out there. So I'm almost done with the book and I like it. I know you have a book club too, right? Are you still doing that, Lane?
Yeah, we're going to read what the Rockefellers do. So I think it's about using infinite banking, whole life insurance as a means to be your own bank.
Yeah, so that's me. How about you? What you been up to?
We closed the Rockefeller deal last month. So I'm going to head up there. We can finally talk to the news reporters now. So I'm going to try to head up there in October.
You're in the newspaper. I saw you guys in the newspaper for that one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big transaction.
Yeah, congratulations. That's cool.
But other than that, I've been grounded at home. Can't leave. Well, I can leave, but it makes it tough to come back in 14-day quarantine, right?
Yep. So all you get is a wave from me through the window, huh?
Yeah. But this Zoom thing, people have the Zoom fatigue, right? Like, because you actually have to be engaged because they can see you. Whereas a phone meeting, you don't get as tired, I guess.
That's true. If all attention has to be there, even things such as your posture, you can't do that if you're just on the phone.
Yeah.
Just short of actually being there in front of the person. Okay, so starting off, some people have probably already heard this, and this is not just on Oahu. This is actually across the states where the real estate market is pretty darn stable, to say the least, and it's kind of counterintuitive to our current situation, especially here in Hawaii, with tourism being our biggest part of the economy, and that's not happening. So, but even on Oahu, we are seeing, in fact, new record high median prices for single family. August, I think this is what they're going to report in 3 days at $849,000 as a new median price. And that's compared to $790,000 August last year. So I think the previous record was $825, I believe, and that was in 2019. I think it was August and November. So yeah, it's exciting times right now. If you have a single family home on Oahu to sell, now is a great time to sell it.
Sell.
Who knows, right? It could stay strong, but I mean and I'll show in the later slides that right now our inventory is really low, so it's a good time. And yeah, the people that are selling really want to sell quickly, because who knows what's going to happen in 6 months, a year, even 3 months for that matter. On the condo side, it's not as exciting, but it's still stable. We're at $435,000 for August 2020 compared to $419,500 prior year. Again, these statistics may not be exactly what you hear from the Honolulu Board of Realtors come the 6th, but it'll be pretty darn close, if not the amounts. So condos not doing as well, but still stable. Again, we mentioned it in the past, where a lot of it's probably due to the short-term rental laws that were changed in the past. So that increased some of the inventory. So that's why it's a little bit more, not as crazy on the condo townhouse side.
The way I look at it is like the single family home stuff is mostly like your higher end guys, or your more stable guys. And whereas the condos, so if you're entry level folks, I got another slide coming up with like rent growths based on like luxury apartments and more. Politically correct way of saying it is necessity based apartment.
There may be some truth to that. So let's talk about single family again. Next slide shows it in a nutshell. And this is what months of inventory that we have currently. So as of the end of August, we have 1.9 months supply of inventory for single family homes on Oahu. And if you look at this curve, it just goes down right from beginning of 2019, but it's also at an all-time low. And of course, supply and demand, right? So one of the big reasons is because people aren't putting their house for sale. So if you go to the next slide, Lane, we'll see these are the new listings for single family homes that have been coming up. If you see this cycle where it comes at the end of the year, it dips really low and then it goes kind of up in the mountain, then it comes back down at the end of the year, up and down. So at the beginning of 2020, you'll see it start to go up, and then it doesn't do that mountain thing. So what happened was, seems like possibly because of COVID, people haven't been listing their homes as they typically have been in prior years. So with that lack of inventory, it's causing a big shortage on the supply side. So that's what's making it so exciting for the industry right now, I guess you could say.
But we don't know if like the other side of the equation is demand up or down, right?
Well, we're getting a lot of multiple offer situations because of the fact that there's not much out there for the buyers to pick on. And the next slide, I think we talk about a little bit about what the demand is coming from. So the first article people may have seen on Hawaii News Now is like, oh, what's going on, right, with unemployment so high? And we mentioned, well, interest rates are really low. Demand is pent up and limited supply. So we talked about did before too, where mortgage rates are so darn low, right? Record lows since the last like 30 years. It's creating all this liquidity for people who can buy. And who can buy? A lot of it is the military. Not a lot of it, but there is the military involved too, because there was a slowdown, I think, in the PCSing that usually happens during the spring and summer. So not a slowdown, but like a delay. So now we're seeing more VA purchases or more military purchases now. So I think when you talk about demand, I think some of the demand is coming from there.
And I buy that pent-up demand thing. I mean, because people were pretty much frozen for 3-4 months. Now, if they're on the fence, they're kind of really itching to buy. So I get that. And if that's the case, you'll see it drop here in the next couple months, I'm guessing.
Yep. We shall see if we can handle that all. So Federal Reserve came up with some information this past week, which is kind of interesting. So they kind of said that they're changing their strategy. So typically their strategy was like there was a 2% target inflation rate, right? And for the last 12 years, we haven't been hitting that target. And they're saying 2% is a healthy growth and inflation rate for the nation. And if it was to get higher than that, then typically you would see the Fed step in and try to maintain it by increasing interest rates. So this past week, Jerome Powell mentioned that, they're kind of changing their strategy and they're trying to get more inflation. So what he said was that in the next possibly 5 years, if inflation does go above the target, they don't plan on increasing the short-term rates. So this is kind of interesting to me. Lane, you and I, as real estate investors, we like inflation, right? To me, that's a good thing, especially if you're a leveraged buyer, right? Because as your property that you purchase goes up, and if you have related debt, that debt stays the same, and as the dollar gets weaker, then that value of that debt gets less. So it's a strong good for us, I guess, what you could say for
investors. You lock in your payments at like 30 years ago or for 30 years, and then I think that's what hurts a lot of people, right? Because they're so adverse to being in debt. But that's what hurts them from getting financially free and using the system to their advantage.
So real estate is a perfect inflation hedge. The challenge is that they came up with this beige book, and as you read through this beige book, it talks about all the different jurisdictions, and it didn't sound very positive in terms of how all these areas were doing economically. The terms they're using were not didn't give you a warm and fuzzy in terms of the future. So that's why it's kind of scary. And so as consumers, as investors, need to be careful, right? Because liquidity is cheap. We know it. At the same time, we want to invest smartly, right? And plan for the future, because who knows what's going to be coming up down the pipeline. Although stock market has been, if that's any indicator, it's like we're all guns a-blazing, which is kind of crazy. I still don't understand that part, but that's for another story. Anyway, I also did a blog. If you guys are interested, check out realestateofhawaii.com/inflation, and I have a blog talking about this exact same thing. So more things off the news, and now we're heading back towards more the corona thing, and there's been a lot of negative press, and this is the kind of things that scare me. If you folks heard this past week that there's a guy in Dallas that woke up with a headache, got into a argument with his wife and sons, and he ended up killing them. So I mean, these are the kind of stories that scare me in terms of how are we doing as a society in coping with this pandemic. And that's why, Lane, I like when you ask those questions about, what are you guys doing today? And so a lot of the things that I'm trying to do is keeping these things in mind and trying to make sure we're healthy as a family, as a community, as a society.
Everybody watches the COVID tracker, right? And not to say that it's not important, but nobody's keeping track of all the suicides and depressed people at home, right?
Yeah. So that COVID tracker, that's probably the only thing that I watch is what is the daily count for the day. Hey, did you go get tested, by the way? We had that free surge testing offered by the feds. I went on Saturday, took the family.
Oh, I don't see anybody, so I don't need to get tested. I'm not going to get COVID myself.
I just went. I said, federal, they're pushing it, so we'll try. So, but anyway, moving on. Yeah, some more information. And I thought, see, this is kind of like the positive things, right? Where you're hearing that, we might be able to get a vaccine as early as November, maybe even late October. This kind of news excites me. And at the same time, I'm hoping it's not driven by any political reasons, if you know what I mean. So, but I don't know, these kind of things get me excited and make me think, okay, then maybe that's why the stock market is doing so well, and that's why our real estate is doing so well. Although there's a lag in the real estate side, and we know that, but the stock market is what kind of throws me off. But here's more positive news. And then some other stuff I wanted to highlight today. So I talked about it earlier. I figured I'll end with some information about ways to not be a statistic, not to be a divorce statistic. I've been seeing articles that are saying couples are getting really put to the test, and divorce rates are increasing because everyone's at home, and now is the time where the last straw hits. So here's some things that we wanted to point out to you from this article. And the next slide, Lane, will talk about some things to keep in mind, right? So as stress goes up, patience and self-control goes down. So try to be tolerant, and even the little things are going to make you crack, right? Your other half is an easy target to be the one to pick on. So always try to keep that in mind. Other things, prolonged time together puts pressure on existing weaknesses. And this other thing of fighting an invisible enemy, the main thing in my mind is always try to have empathy, try to put yourself in that other person's shoe. And it takes a lot more energy now than ever. So try to keep all these things in mind. And the number one word, I think, is empathy. Try to put yourself in these other people's shoes and be the better person, if you will, or just try to make the best of the situation. So the next slide, the last slide, is the 4 tips, I believe, that we talk about. Avoid making decisions you might regret. Avoid saying things you might regret. Talk about issues with your spouse and your other half, and dig in if you have to touch the surface. It's always a good time to talk to your spouse. In fact, just last night I was talking to my wife and just doing a temperature gauge because there's so much change, right? Just this past week, my wife started working full-time from home too. So I just try to check in with her and say, how is this working? How can we tweak this? Because now with both of us being home and the kids, and we're both trying to help out, the tendency for the kids a lot of times is to run to mommy for assistance. But I told her, what, mommy's got to work. So certain days are bug mommy days, certain days are bug daddy days, and so we're trying that out. So communication is key, and empathy, that's the main thing, and then we'll get through this.
I got a good resource for you. If you go to you ever heard of Gottman Institute?
The Gotham?
Gottman.
No.
Gottman.com. So like this guy in Seattle, he kind of did he's famous for doing these experiments with couples, like Big Brother style, where he puts them in like a room and they watch them.
Cool.
But he has like this marriage minute email that goes out, I think, a couple times a week.
Okay.
And they're like actionable things you can do in less than 60 seconds.
Oh, neat.
So Gottman.com, and then you go to the bottom left and subscribe there. So my name is Lane Kawaoka. I still have my PE in case I ever would like to go back to an engineering job. But full-time investor, and have my podcast, SimplePassiveCashflow.com. So you are kind of mentioning about like what's going on with the stock market and the economy. I had Russell Perret on my podcast. He talked about the repo market. Oh. If you want to Google this, not a lot of people talk about this, but the repo market, kind of listen to podcasts, but people sort of think it's kind of like a conspiracy where there were some financial issues. So how do you put out a smoking engine? Well, one way is you just put a whole bunch of water in it, or in this case, just create a whole bunch of money and stimulus money to a tune of like, I don't know, what is it, 4 to 7 trillion, something like that, something ridiculous. And the thought is, COVID-19, not to downplay it or anything like that, but it was a great way to infuse a lot of money into the system. Yeah, a lot of it went to Section 8 and all these PPP, idle loans, but question is, do we really need it, or was it going to something else? Nobody knows.
Dum dum dum.
Dum dum dum. So I try to not read a lot of news because it doesn't really improve my life one bit. But I do check it like for a minute a day, and I always crack myself up by these like headlines. How the headline is supposed to explain what happened that day in the stock market. And the stock market is very irrational. It's based on emotion. Yet these guys, these English majors and journalists are creating some kind of story that's supposed to explain what happened that day. So on the bottom or on the top, this was a day where things were really good. So they said, yeah, COVID vaccine was the reason why. And on the bottom was today's one. Stocks walloped the September sales said it. These media guys, their job is to sell attention. That's their job. Also to inform us, sort of. But I think as an investor, you need to be aware of what's going on, but also be able to pick apart real headlines from the rest and also read the article too. Just because the stock market goes up and something else happened in the world does not mean that it may be correlated, but it may not be causation, is all I'm saying here.
Or even just the one reason that causes it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Teaching point, sec 2 here is I got 5 billionaires, Warren Buffett, and what their biggest purchase this month was and what their biggest sale. So he bought a lot of gold. He sold a lot of JP Morgan Chase. So headlines will always be written on this stuff. Like they call this whale watching. So you watch what the big guys do. And supposedly they're a lot more sophisticated or insider than the rest of us. And so there's some articles saying, well, buy gold because Warren Buffett is doing it. David Temper and sold a lot of Amazon and bought a lot of T-Mobile. All I'm saying here is just because these guys do it doesn't mean that you should do it. It drives me crazy when I hear investors where their net worth is 10 to 100 million sort of sitting on the sidelines, and I hear the guy who barely has 100 grand to their name or under $1 million net worth also sitting on the sidelines because they heard that that's what Warren Buffett is doing. I'm not Warren Buffett. Neither are you. Neither are you, Dean. Doesn't mean that you should follow what they are.
Not only that is you're getting this information way after the point in time that they did it. So they had potentially real-time information that they decided to do this transaction on. And by the time you're getting it, as well as everyone else, it's public, right? So everyone else has time to react on it. So to your point, Lane, it's like, it's hard to chase the smart money especially when we're talking about the market being a very real time nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, artificial intelligence has made it, I think, impossible for the little guy to trade at home, which is, I don't know. But I'm going to end it there. I don't trade stocks, so what do I know? And, also, you never know when one of these guys are unloading an asset just to harvest tax losses.
Yeah.
Right? Or vice versa.
Or insider information. Oops, did I say that?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the beauty of real estate, right? You don't invest unless you have insider information.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do anything
and it's legal,
unless
right?
I don't do anything unless I have an unfair advantage.
Right. Good point.
So on middle of August, we touched record highs yet again. And I'll tell you why the stock market is up, Dean, despite record level unemployment. It's because the government pumped in $4 to $7 trillion of magically created money. And more importantly, they're kind of backing a lot of corporate bonds from these guys. So it's like effectively, like, if you're a company, you can't lose. So that's why prices have inflated again.
It's that whole too big to fail again.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's not real. It's all fake. I mean, easy come, easy go. I don't mind it.
Well, hopefully with all that money and the liquidity pouring into the economy, then hopefully that will create more inflation, which is what we're looking for, right?
Yeah. Bring it on. Inflate it. I want inflation to go as high as it can. I mean, now we're looking at like interest rates at 2.7% now.
It's unreal. Yeah. And VA loans are even lower than that. It's unreal, man.
Yeah. And I talked to some guys that are like, oh, I'm just sitting on the sideline. I'm like, you're missing one of the best opportunities here to lock up debt at 2.7% when the earlier slide, you just told me, Dean, and I've heard this other places, that interest rates aren't going to go any lower, right? Yep. This is the time where you buy when there's uncertainty. If you cash flow, right?
Yeah.
Something can be said for more speculative plays. But this was a big one affecting landlords. So there's a new order that you cannot evict tenants through the end of the year. A lot of places like California, those type of places had something in place, but this is more of a national order. You guys can read this on the YouTube channel. You guys can read through this or just Google it on your own. But it's supposed to help out the guys under $100,000 annual income or 200 grand married, filed jointly. So that's cool. I mean, people that should be getting it. I did find one little loophole that consult your property manager, of course, and your lawyer. What I read here is you can still evict if the tenant has destroyed property or possesses a threat to health or safety of neighbors. I mean, we have a lot of evictions. We always have a lot of evictions. I mean, sometimes people got to go, and sometimes you have to use the letter of the ruling in your favor. Not that you're being unfair, but that's most tenants are perfect citizens. You need to kind of, that's the way I see it. Maybe I should run for mayor one day.
Yeah. Then we can invite you on this podcast and see if you'll join us.
But okay, so here's what I was talking earlier. So here's some data from Yardi on where the rents are going. And on the left is your averages. In the middle is the year-over-year rent growth for lifestyle asset class. So that's your luxury stuff, your high-end stuff. I don't really invest in that stuff. I mainly invest in renter by necessity asset class. These are the B and C class and possibly even D class. So you can see where the rents are still tracking forward on the top there. And the big losers are San Francisco, San Jose, and
even Denver's on there.
Yeah.
Oh.
But even San Francisco Bay Area is having a little seller market bump too, because supply is low. Same thing.
Well, it's just surprising to me that you have the ones on the top like Phoenix and this Atlanta where you're in the 4% increases. That's pretty, for year over year. In talking about July
through COVID. This is all through COVID.
Yeah, that's very eye opening, I guess you could say. Let's go fly to Phoenix and buy some stuff.
Well, I can't say that out loud, but you should have jumped into the Atlanta deal. We're tripling investors' money in 2 years, man. It's unreal. Look at John. So John Burns they picked up some of the best markets. So I can explain, like, people are moving away from San Jose and San Francisco here, but they're running away to Sacramento. It's for something that's like a third of the price.
Yeah.
They can get a much bigger place out in Sacramento. And same phenomenon with Inland Empire is considered like San Bernardino, which is an hour or two outside of LA. It's the same thing there. But the other markets are Phoenix, Salt Lake, Boise. Salt Lake, you can't really cash flow. So same thing as Boise. I mean, I think great markets, but you can't cash flow there. Austin, Dallas, Houston, Nashville, Atlanta, and Tampa round out the rest. Las Vegas isn't doing too hot, man. It's a tourist
yeah.
thing.
Right.
While we're on that topic, I think Las Vegas is similar to like San Francisco and Hawaii. Like right now you're having that seller's pump, right? There's just loads of supply. Mm-hmm. But like look at the rents. The rents drive demand. It's really real demand to me. Look where the rents are going in Las Vegas, and now I would take the exit on this Las Vegas stuff. Just saying. Yeah. Take a look at it. I'm curious. I don't know what the rents are doing in Las Vegas. I haven't seen it lately.
I haven't either. Fortunately, my tenants are what do you call that? They're what's that called?
Section 8 or
first responders, kind of they're necessary employee workers.
Oh, essential guys.
Essential. Yeah. So fortunately, that's been working out for me. But yeah, to your point, I mean, Las Vegas, you get all of the tourist industry, just like how we do, right? In Hawaii. So to your point, it's like something's got to give, because how can it sustain? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hawaii's just a little different since everybody lives with mom and dad, where Las Vegas, they don't do that.
Yeah. And then,
they went to Las Vegas to run away from mom and dad, right?
right. And then we have our second industry, if you will, but is military. Right? We have a strong military presence, so that might be what's holding us up, especially on the real estate side.
How multifamily's defense nature holds investor interest. So a lot of the industry experts and insiders are saying that the sector's resiliency is illustrated by prolonged outperformance and durability since the onset of the virus. This, and you compare it with office space or retail sector that are getting killed right now. People need a place to stay. And then just like New York City, just like San Francisco, people are leaving because it was already expensive. There's no like fun activities out there. There's no sense of being there. And especially with people remote working too these days, there's no point to being in here.
Everything that attracted them is now what makes them not a place to want to be anymore, right?
Yeah. State of California, state of New York, some of the worst financially governments. New York ends eviction moratorium or extends. So here's a kind of like a story of what I was saying with places like San Francisco, like Pinterest, big tech company. They walked away from a lease and they had to pay a $90 million cancellation fee, but they don't care because they don't want the office space. They're telling all their employees to just work at home.
Cutting their losses, right? To your point.
Yeah. And Amazon unveils, and this is cool, like big companies, they take over, right? In times of distress, where you see all the restaurants going out of business. I'm wondering who has the capital, can pull the capital together to create a restaurant or a gym or whatever. Amazon is a well-capitalized company, and they will probably be handsomely rewarded this. So they're going in and getting office space in Manhattan, Dallas, Detroit, Denver, Phoenix, San Diego. Here is a little article on Class A vacancies rise and rents fall amidst crisis. So Class A is your more luxury stuff, which is to be expected. These are the guys who are kind of living outside their means and need to come back to more B and C class affordable housing. Amelie is a company that I follow. These guys, they operate luxury apartment building. If you're in your 20s, Dean, and you're making $100,000 a year out of college, and you were living the YOLO lifestyle, you'd live in one of these Amelie buildings. It's really, really swanky places to live. So I follow these guys because to me, they're a leading indicator where the industry is going. These are the canaries in the coal mines that I think get hit the hardest or hit the first in any times like this. But their quote here is, economics forecasts released earlier in the year have been erased and completely withdrawn. And they got asked, what's your outlook for multifamily market over the next 2 years? And the response is roughly flat this year for 2020 with an uptick next year and a nice bounce in 2022 as supply likely lessens. I'm relatively bullish. I know, but what do you think, man? I think this country is in a housing crisis, and if you are in the right markets, I think you're going to see one of the best bull markets in the next 5 years.
I'm conservatively bullish.
Neutral positive or conservative bullish?
Neutral positive.
Neutral positive.
I'm doing stuff like restructuring all my debt to have my dry gunpowder rates and get ready to pull the trigger. Still shorting the market too on the stock side, but getting beaten up there. Although market did do a slight hiccup today, right? Anyway, moving on.
It'll probably be up tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Right? It goes back and forth.
I think the futures are down again though, so that's kind of interesting. Anyway.
So HUD, they came out with some more coronavirus relief. I think this is going to go to more Section 8.
Yeah. I think the existing voucher holders, I think, is what it goes to. Right?
Yeah. I follow this guy, Sam Zell, who, if you Google him, he invests off macroeconomic trends. So he invested in like mobile home parks a few years back. So he's not a big fan of retail right now. Calls it a falling knife because of of course, Amazon and online e-commerce. Here's a stock you want to trade, Dean. ETF for e-commerce. Global X e-commerce ETF. No-brainer to me. But I still won't trade it, but I think e-commerce is here to stay, and through a pandemic, it doesn't. Look what's been doing through a pandemic, right?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I got Amazon boxes popping up on my door pretty darn often these days.
Yeah. Blackstone is another thing I follow. These are the big hedge funds that when there is blood in the streets, they know what to go and hunt. So these guys went in and bought Tricon Residential, which invests in single-family homes. These are the same guys who, back in 2010 to 2014, they were in Memphis and competing with us on all those turnkey rentals. Same kind of groups.
They just scoop up like a whole, just say, give me your top 40
Yeah.
properties kind of thing they go through.
I'm waiting for these guys to like go into like office space or retail. That's what I'm kind of watching for. And here's a graphic on all the bankruptcies and closures of mid-range malls. So like I call mid-range like Brooks Brothers, Forever 21, like not high-end stuff like JCPenney. I'm pretty sure Macy's is going to shut down one of these days pretty soon too. Only the high-end stuff really survives these days.
Better use all your gift cards while you have them, huh?
I don't have any gift cards. Sure, my wife hides them from me. So.
Well, you better let her know to use it because, like,
Actually,
to your point,
she doesn't use Nordstrom.
Oh,
Thank God.
No,
She thinks
you know,
it's overpriced.
Well, like we had a bunch of Macy's cards from way back, like wedding time, that we didn't use. So, like, foreseeing this kind of things happening, we started just using all the gift cards like for Macy's and stuff. So.
Yeah, I like to use the Nordstrom gift cards for like the bar. It's pretty good food. I wouldn't buy anything there. So.
Yeah.
Simon Malls, they're like a mall owner, so they're going in and buying like Brooks Brothers. So this is the kind of stuff I like. I think it's really cool when these guys they go into and buy a distressed asset like that. But that's kind of the end of the report. For those of you guys who stayed to the end, the Easter egg is a K1 tracker phone. For those of you guys in passive syndication deals, I have a little form that I use for my CPA where I put all my passive losses on it, and then I check box if it's a GPLP position, and it helps them to keep track of it. And it really helps me to make sure that these guys did their job right, because I'm able to sum up my passive losses and I'm able to kind of find it on my tax form, which I should get back any week now. I'm pretty excited. I love taxes. So if you guys want that, you guys can email Lane at SimplePassiveCashflow before September 15th. Yeah. Anything else to close out, Dean?
Just again, stay safe and sane and have empathy. Have empathy.
Wise advice. All right, everybody. If you guys have any questions, let us know. Let us know if you guys want to do some in-person meetings eventually. One of these days, we will have those once again. But until then, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
A free real estate investing group. Check out reialoha.com.
We're just two local guys with so much to say. So listen to the real estate brothers today.